Hey guys, welcome back to DCS World. I'm Spudknocker, as always. And in this video, we're going to be doing some testing, comparing the maximum radar detection range between the F-16C Fighting Falcon and the A-18C Hornet. Now, as we know from the study that I conducted of DCS World players, the vast majority of DCS World pilots fly the F-18C exclusively, followed up close in second by the F-16C Fighting Falcon. Now, because of the similarities between the two aircraft, both in real life and in DCS World, many DCS World community members have made many different comparisons between the F-16 and the FA-18 over the span of the module's lifetime, both through the lens of a DCS World module and the real aircraft themselves. So I figured it would be a very good idea to kind of do some comparison videos between the two aircraft, and I wanted to start off with the absolute maximum detection range of the radars in these two aircraft. Now we are going to set it up so that way it is repeatable and it is very sterile and is not really indicative of a real combat situation you may find yourself in a DCS World mission, campaign, or on a server, but should give you a good idea of the absolute all-out maximum range of the radars of these two aircraft. Now, the results of this test was very, very surprising to me. I made the voiceovers live as I was flying through the testing session, so you guys will definitely see that my surprise with the results and the flip-flop of my predictions was very, very genuine. So I hope you guys enjoy watching this video, and I hope you guys keep enjoying your DCS FA-18C and F-16C to the maximum. Let's go ahead and get started with the tests. Okay guys, here we are in our FA-18C Hornet for the first part of our comparison in the max detection ranges for the radars of our F-16 versus our FA-18. And I'm making this voiceover live as I fly through this experiment, so I really don't know what the results of this test are going to be. However, it is my prediction that the AN APG-73 radar in the nose of our FA-18 will outrange that in the AN APG-68 of the F-16. However, this is a pure prediction, and I'm actually quite excited to figure out what exactly is going to happen here. So why don't we go ahead and pause the simulation for a moment and take a look at how we're actually going to be performing this test. We'll go to the F10 map, and we can see we've got our little FA-18 here out in the desert of eastern Syria, and spawning about 180 nautical miles off our nose near waypoint 1 is a group of Red Force aircraft. They're about 270 degrees off the nose at about 165 nautical miles as of right now. These aircraft are arranged from large to medium to small, from our right to our left, from north to south. The reason why we have a large, a medium, and a small aircraft type is to determine exactly what ranges we are going to pick up these kind of stereotypical targets that you're going to want to find on your radar in your FA-18 or your F-16. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at the F2 view of these aircraft and talk about why I chose these particular aircraft for the test. We've got ourselves an IL-76, and it is a large transport aircraft, of course, and it's going to be representative of all of the large aircraft you're going to want to get on your radar in DCS. Whether that's an enemy transport aircraft, an enemy AWACS aircraft, or maybe even a friendly tanker that you're trying to find and hook up with quickly, so that way you can get some gas before you fuel starve yourself. Or maybe it's a friendly AWACS that you're trying to protect. You're trying to get him on radar, find where he is, so that way you can find the MiGs that are after him. Our second aircraft is, of course, going to be a Su-27. Now, this is going to be kind of a good representation of the medium-sized aircraft that you're going to want to find and detect with your radar in DCS World. This is going to be representative of, say, the radar cross-sections of a number of aircraft, such as, of course, the Su-27, Su-30s, maybe towards the MiG-29s, but that's kind of maybe somewhere between medium and small type aircraft. F-14 Tomcats, F-15 Eagles, FA-18 Hornets, aircraft of those types. We also, of course, have this aircraft loaded up with a bunch of Alamos and R-73s, and this is to make the frontal radar cross-section of our Su-27 as big as possible. So all of these right angles that you see on the control surfaces of these Alamos and R-27s, those just bounce back radar waves like no other. And this is why internal carriage of weapons is so important on stealthy aircraft, is because most weapons that are fielded by nations across the globe for air-to-air and air-to-ground nastiness are very much unstealthy and return radar signals like nothing else. That is for sure. So we're giving ourselves the absolute best chance at the farthest detection of our Su-27 here. Our next aircraft is, of course, going to be the good old venerable MiG-21 Fishbed. Now, this is going to be representative of smaller type aircraft like, of course, the MiG-21, maybe the F-5 Tiger II, the MiG-19 Farmer, the MiG-15, as well as maybe the MiG-17 Fresco if it gets added to DCS eventually, and of course, smaller modern jets like maybe the MiG-29 or the F-16. But those two jets may fall somewhere between the detection ranges that we find for our Su-27 and our MiG-21 here. Now, it is kind of my prediction that we'll get the IL-76 on our radar somewhere around the 100 nautical mile range mark. We might get the Su-27 somewhere around 60 to 70, and then I'm thinking probably the MiG-21 down at around 40 to 50 nautical miles. But let's go ahead and hop in our cockpit. We'll get the simulation unpaused, and we'll go ahead and keep on flying through it. And we're going to go ahead and, of course, push our radar range scale out to 160 nautical miles. As you guys know, the radar range scale does not change the actual signals that are coming out of your radar in the nose of your aircraft or telling them to go out to a farther range. Those signals, they just come out of the nose in their cone shape. They go out as far as they possibly can, and whatever can bounce back bounces back and is interpreted by the radar receiver in the nose of our aircraft to create radar contacts or bricks if we're in RWS mode. We're using RWS mode because that is going to get us the furthest range possible for detecting targets, and it is kind of a way to keep everything kind of neutral between the two aircraft. We're also going to change our pulse Doppler setting to the high setting, which is going to be the best way to detect incoming aircraft at a forward aspect. We're also going to squeeze down our azimuth setting to 80 degrees, and let's go for a 2-bar scan. Our aircraft that we're going to be trying to detect today, to make it as neutral and easy as possible to actually get them up on radar, they're at co-altitude with us at 20,000 feet MSL. We're going to make sure that our master arm is set to safe. So because we're not actually going to be deploying any weapons today, it's all about just radar detection ranges on our radar here. So why don't we go ahead and speed up the simulation, and that way we can get to a point where we're going to start to think about getting that radar detection as soon as possible. So we're just kind of speeding up the simulation a little bit here. Definitely getting to the point where I thought we would have already had the cargo aircraft, the IL-76, on our radar. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and determine exactly the distance of which we're getting that IL-76 on our radar. We know that it is in fact the cargo aircraft because it is off to our right towards the north. If it were the Su-27 that had popped up first, it would have been right on our nose, right at a heading of about 270. So let's go ahead and pop over to the F10 map, and we'll zoom in a little bit to be even more precise, and we'll do a direct line at about 75 nautical miles, so about 25 nautical miles closer than I had originally stated. Let's go ahead. We did kind of lapse a little bit. We paused the simulation a little bit after it actually popped up on our radar, and we got a couple sweeps of the radar in between there. And based off of our closure rate, why don't we go ahead and round that to about 80 nautical miles for some nice round numbers for us for our results. So let's go ahead and unpause, and we'll keep going here. and we'll wait until we get both of the other aircraft on radar as well. All right, interesting that we kind of lost him on radar for a second. That's probably because we're at a 2-bar scan. So the radar is scanning underneath him and then coming back onto him. We can see we're getting more regular sweeps over the top of him as well as we get closer. And we're waiting on our 2 fighters to pop up here. I will say that I'm definitely surprised by the result here. I would have definitely thought that we would have had a further detection range on such a large target from our F-18. And we just zoomed in the radar range scale. Again, this is not affecting how the radar is scanning. It is only changing the scale at which the display is showing us the contacts out in front of us. And this has definitely taken longer, and we're definitely closing a lot closer to the target than I would have imagined us getting that Su-27 up on our radar as well. There we go. So let's go ahead and pause it. And we've got the Su-27 on our radar right here. Based off of our radar range scaling, I'm guessing, so we've got about 20, 40, 60, 80 up at the top. So that gives us maybe about 65, 70, potentially. Let's go ahead and check it out on the F10 map. So we've got our Su-27 right here, of course. And we'll go ahead and draw ourselves a nice line. And about 46, so maybe 50 nautical miles or so. All right, so let's try to count this off again. So 20, 40, yeah, 50. Made that mistake earlier. So that's definitely going to be about 50 nautical miles for the detection of our Su-27. So let's keep it coming for the detection of our MiG-21 that should be just to the south of that Su-27 contact. I guess I could have just simply put the captain's bars over the top of the contact to get a range to it, but woulda, coulda, shoulda, I suppose. There we go. There's our MiG-21. There's our MiG-21 contact right there, right at about 20, 40 nautical miles. So why don't we go ahead and put our cursor over the top of that and determine, yep, it's right at about 40 nautical miles, and let's confirm it with our... Yep, right at about 40 nautical miles. So that makes perfect sense there for us. And that is the only aircraft that kind of fell within my prediction range. I really thought that we were going to see the IL-76 and the Su-27 a lot further out on our radar screen than we did. However, it is definitely an interesting test to take note, and so a lot of people, I feel like, in DCS tend to think that their radar is going to work a heck of a lot better than it actually does. And so this is a very good test to show you guys exactly where you're going to expect to see these 2 contacts, or these 3 contacts, and at what ranges in the F-18. So we got this guy at about 30 nautical miles now, this guy at about 25-ish, and this guy out here at about 30. So another thing that people will wonder about is like, well, Spud, you set up the aircraft to fly on parallel tracks at you. Why is the Su-27 flying at you? And we can see the trend of the MiG-21 and the trend of the IL-76 kind of coming away from us. And this is kind of the issue with the way Western aircraft are, or specifically more American aircraft, are designed in the way their radar pages are formatted, is that the bottom down here is our nose of our aircraft, the entire bottom. And then if we had it kind of, rather than stretched out on the bottom and then a kind of square shape, if we had it more of a fan shape, kind of more like a ultrasound kind of shape, like our air-to-ground radar, here you would see that they would actually be tracking in towards us instead of tracking away from us, as we saw on that trend earlier. You can actually see this difference quite readily if you hop into, say, the DCS Mirage 2000C. You can see that they have more of a ultrasound type shape to their radar display that makes it a little bit easier to interpret what you're seeing on that radar and not wondering why aircraft that are flying towards me are now flying away from me based off what it's seeing on the radar itself. So, alrighty guys, let's go ahead and pause and we will hop into the F-16 and do a comparison. Okay guys, we're now in the cockpit of our F-16C for the second part of our max detection range comparison video between the FA-18 and our Viper here. So we're going to try and get that IL-76, Su-27, and MiG-21 on our radar at the furthest range we possibly can. So let's go ahead and get everything set up in the cockpit. Master arm off, of course. We'll get our Link 16 transmitting, and we will zoom in on our radar here. So to show you guys what exactly we have set up here, and to show you once again that it is the exact same test that we are running in our F-16. We've got our F-16 and we're about 180 nautical miles out from waypoint 1, about 166 nautical miles from our Su-27, and they are loaded exactly the same as they were with our previous test in the Hornet. And we've got our IL-76 out here as well. And of course, we've got our F-16 out here above the clouds at 20,000 feet, or a little over 20,000 feet, the same altitude that we have our threat aircraft at. So we'll go ahead and unpause the simulation. And we will push our radar display range out to 160 nautical miles. You'll notice that it's the exact same scale range as in the FA-18C. We'll do a 2-bar scan, and we'll do an azimuth of 30 degrees. So that way we can get a faster sweep back and forth across the nose of our jet. We're keeping it in range while scan mode to be as similar to the results that we got in our FA-18. So time for some predictions again. I think we're going to get the IL-76 at about 70 nautical miles, probably just a little bit less than what we got in our FA-18. Probably the Su-27, yeah, about 10% less again, so maybe about 40-ish nautical miles, and then maybe the MiG-21 down around 30 nautical miles, but I guess we'll see in just a moment here. So we'll go ahead and speed up time a little bit. And we're going about 400 indicated. Whoop. So that's interesting. That is a lot earlier to get a contact than we got in the FA-18. So let's move our captain's bars over the top of it and see exactly how far that is. That's pretty darn close to 160 nautical miles, if that's our scaling, with 160 up at the top. So let's go ahead and check the F-10 map and see exactly how far away that is. That's about 150 nautical miles to pick up the IL-76. Wow, that is a result that I was definitely not thinking was going to happen. I wonder if maybe Eagle Dynamics needs to do a little bit of tuning, because everything that I know about the F-16, the size of the nose of the F-16, the radar that's in it, and the design purpose and philosophy behind the F-16 makes me think that the FA-18 would have had a longer detection range than the F-16, but I suppose I am wrong. So why don't we go ahead and speed it up again. I'll just go for twice normal speed. So I'm guessing that we'll probably get it pretty darn soon. Still at the correct altitude. Okay, and our IL-76 is coming through our range scale right at about 80 nautical miles. Not quite showing up at that scale yet, so... And there is our second target. So that is got to be our Su-27 right at about 80 nautical miles based off of our range scale in our jet. So let's go ahead and check the F-10 map. And I'm definitely surprised by this result. So yep, 80 nautical miles. So let's go ahead and pop this on our little kneeboard table that I made here. All right, and now we're just looking for our MiG-21 to pop up on our radar. So this is very interesting results here that I can say for certain that I was not expecting in the slightest. And we can see that those aircraft are line abreast at, they should be about 20 nautical miles apart from each other, both going about 400 knots of ground speed. And the MiG-21 should pop up on our radar just a little bit to the south of that Su-27. And we can see that our contacts here are definitely at our co-altitude, being at 20,000 feet. And there it is. Just like that. Magic. So that looks maybe about 60 to 70 nautical miles on our range scale there. So let's go ahead and pop over to the F10 map and take a look here. Right at about 65 nautical miles. Wow. That is a result that I was not expecting, guys. This is really, really interesting. So that's 65 nautical miles for the F-16's AN APG-68 versus the AN APG-73 picking up the MiG-21 at 40 nautical miles in our FA-18. Wow, that is a result that I was definitely not expecting. That is pretty shocking to me. But I guess our humble little F-16 is definitely pretty darn capable in the air-to-air arena. It also could be that Ecodynamics has not done a ton of tuning of the radar in the F-16 as of yet, as of August 2021. And a lot of people did note that the radar in the FA-18 seemed to get nerfed / degraded a bit as Ecodynamics was finishing up the tuning of the avionics in the FA-18 prior to its full release. So it could be unrealistic what we're seeing here, or it could be realistic. I really don't have the knowledge to say one way or the other than what we are getting here on our radar in our F-16. But as I've said multiple times now, this is a result that I was certainly not expecting. So let's go ahead and throw a little table up onto the screen here to show you guys the detection ranges of the 3 different aircraft types in our FA-18 versus our F-16. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it kind of gives you some insight as to when to expect to pick up different size targets with the radars of the 2 most popular modules in DCS World. So please fly safe out there, guys, and stay healthy as well, and we shall see ya in the next one.